Going on, everybody? Smitty from around the 412 here with another previewing the opponent. Week 4, the Pittsburgh Steelers traveling to NRG Stadium to take on the Houston Texans. DeMeco Ryans, first-year head coach. CJ Stroud, rookie quarterback. Bobby Slowik, first-year offensive coordinator. A lot of good things going on in Houston, in my opinion. The early returns are good. I know they're just 1-2, but they've looked a lot better than I expected them to this early in the tenure of a lot of those guys. Let's start up top with DeMeco Ryans coming over, defensive mind, coming over from the San Francisco 49ers, part of that Shanahan tree. But man, I think that he has those guys playing hard. He isn't playing the right way. And I think he's very creative on defense. He's getting the most out of Will Anderson right now. While it's not showing on the stat sheet with just one sack, that pressure rate nearly 30%. I think he's impacting a lot of plays, and I think he's going to present a huge challenge for Chukwuekwor for on Sunday. So I'm curious to see what they do on the back end, getting some help back. Jalen Pitre, who missed last week, should be good to go. Him and Jimmy Ward, really nice safety duo there in the back end. Won't have Derek Stingley, who's still going to miss some time there, but they do a lot of different things. They disguise a lot of things, far from what they were doing with Lovey in town, just running a bunch of Tampa 2 and stuff. I really like what the Texans have going on defensively. Don't think they're necessarily the most talented group. Former Steeler Steven Nelson on that side of the football for them as well. But I think that they do a lot of good things. They're well coached. They are a decent unit because of that. As they continue to add more talent to that, I really think that the DeMeco's got them heading in the right direction. On offense, man, with Bobby Slowik and CJ Stroud, it's been a really nice marriage for them so far. CJ Stroud just coming off winning AFC Rookie of the Month. Doing some really good things. 4 touchdown passes, hasn't turned the football over yet. Just making some really good reads. We already knew going back to his time at Ohio State how accurate this dude was. I don't think that was ever going to be the question. He's held up well against the blitz, and man, that is a band-aid of an offensive line right now that they're throwing out there. Laremy Tunsil going to miss this game. His backup Josh Jones going to miss this game. Still don't have Titus Howard back. It's really Shaq Mason and a bunch of guys that otherwise would not be starting if that was a fully healthy group. Obviously, Kenyon Green, we knew about the injury ahead of time. Don't have their normal center as well, so you got 6th-round rookie Jarrett Patterson in there. Former Steeler Kendrick Green going to be lining up at guard for them. It hasn't mattered for CJ Stroud, though, who's been really good this year. Some really good targets, though, and too. You look at Nico Collins, you look at Tank Dell, those guys respectively 12th and 17th this year in yards per catch, 17.3 yards per catch for Nico Collins, 16.7 yards per catch for Tank Dell. They're doing a lot of really good things on offense, and I think Bobby Slowik is a big reason why. I mentioned him at the beginning when I was talking about, additions, first-year guys for that organization. Bobby Slowik, another guy that came over from San Fran, learning under Shanahan, has just done some really good things. I think that he put CJ Stroud in the best position to be able to fire that quick trigger that he has, really good quick processor, and just the accuracy always on point for CJ Stroud. Again, that was kind of his calling card coming out of Ohio State. So I think that it's an interesting matchup for the Steelers. You probably don't want to blitz him a lot, as I mentioned, really good against the blitz. So if the Steelers are able to get to him rushing 4, which when you look at the state of that offensive line, they should be able to do, and drop 7 back, throw some different looks at him. I think that there's a lot of things, while giving CJ Stroud a ton of credit for what he's done to this point. He hasn't seen a lot of what different NFL defenses can do coverage-wise up to this point. I mean, he's only played 3 games in the NFL, so there's still a lot of different looks you can throw at him that he hasn't seen yet. Terrell Austin, Mike Tomlin should have that unit ready to go for this one and be able to throw a lot of different looks at him. I'm curious in terms of what type of different packages we could see. Are we going to see a lot of big nickel? My partner in crime on Steelers Afternoon Drive, Alan Saunders, likes to call it skinny nickel, like the 3 safety looks. I think Joey Porter Jr., who just continues to play more and more, will once again get the most snaps that he's had. I think that takes another increase. Desmond King, a little bit of a revenge game for him going back to Houston. I do expect him to get a helmet. He played 0 defensive snaps last week, just 7 snaps on special teams. I think we see his role increase a little bit in this one too. I don't know that he obviously doesn't know much about this offense, if at all. You would imagine that quite a bit has changed in the Bobby Slowik tenure already. So not from that perspective, I don't think he's going to necessarily be a huge benefit to the Steelers in that regard. But I think it's just about time to continue to ramp him up as well. Shannon Sullivan hasn't been bad. I mean, there's no glaring things that he's done where I'm like, we got to get this guy off the field and give Desmond King a helmet. But I think they brought in Desmond King to eventually take on that role. And I just think that this is the week to really start to see that transition take place. Along the defensive line, I've mentioned, you should be able to get home with 4. Keanu Benton and Monty Adams both had really nice games on Sunday Night Football, and I look at what they're going to be able to do in the interior, and I think that they could both be in line for, back-to-back big days. We will see if Braden Fajoko gets a helmet in this one. I've been calling for it for a couple weeks now. Thought it really made sense against the Raiders if you weren't going to do it against the Browns. I don't know that this is necessarily the week to do it, but I mean, I'm not going to rule out it happening if they are looking for a traditional nose tackle in the middle of that defense. Again, with Keanu Benton and Monty Adams, both, I like to see them outside of that true 0 or 1 tech. I like to see them move down a little bit further along the line. TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith, man, I am curious to see what those two are able to wreak on Sunday. You look at it again. I mentioned the tackle situation for really the offensive line situation in general, but that tackle situation for them, it is not good. And you look at the weeks that these guys have stocked up here. TJ coming off at winning AFC Defensive Player of the Month. Alex Highsmith probably had a case in his own right, if TJ Watt wasn't his running mate, and he's faced a better level of competition through the first 3 weeks here. So I looked at what those two are going to be able to do on Sunday, and I think they're just going to impact play after play after play. CJ Stroud better be ready to hold up against those guys. We'll see if they can crack the code on him. Again, I don't think he hasn't thrown an interception yet, but I think one is coming on Sunday. I'll go ahead and predictively say that. Steelers offense versus Texans defense. Steelers offense, I thought, they showed some life on Sunday night against the Raiders. I don't know that the play calling was necessarily there for me yet, but I do think they went in with a game plan that they were able to execute at times, especially that drive to go up 23-7, where we saw a lot of different things from the Steelers offense that we've been calling for. We saw play action. We saw them blocking well out in space. We saw a bootleg. We saw them run motion and then pass off of that motion, which is something that I've been calling for. I think that they showed a pulse on Sunday night, and we'll see if that continues going into this game. Once again, I think the Texans are playing well above where they should be with the personnel that they have. And I'm not saying they can't continue to do so, but I do think that this is a spot where, there is some for the taking, if you will, for the Steelers offense. I think that, across the board, like I look at Calvin Austin coming off the game that he just had. George Pickens had a really nice game too. I know it doesn't necessarily show on the stat sheet every time because he's the one drawing the double teams and stuff now, but I think he's answered the bell in the absence of Deontay Johnson. We saw Pat Frymuth getting a little bit more involved. Kenny looked more accurate in this one. I'm just calling for that run game to get going, man. I think that, I thought last week was going to be the week for it. I'm not going to predictively sit, every week jump on and say, I think this is the week the running game gets going, but I'm calling for it to happen. I'm not going to predictively say it will. But man, it starts up front. Those guys need to win in the trenches. We'll see if James Daniels is able to go in this one. Honestly, hasn't been very good. I thought Isaac Seumalo took a step last week, looking more like the player they thought they were bringing in free agency. We will see what that brings this week. Houston Texans, again, they don't necessarily look like they present a huge challenge for NFL offenses. But DeMeco Ryans' mind is what makes this all come together. He's the straw that stirs that drink on the defensive side of the football for the Houston Texans. Should be a good one. I do think that the Steelers win this game. I think that the offense, I called for it on Around the 412, the podcast recording of the Steelers show. I think they cracked 30 in this one. So we will see if that comes true. Let me know your guys' thoughts. 30-20 Steelers is my prediction. Here we go.